it's Angel Vane, and this is episode 55 of my author's diary. Now, this week, I'm continuing to tell you guys about the saga of getting my audiobook for The Accidental Hero done. And Find Away Voices sent me a list of potential narrators for me to listen to and decide if I wanted any of them to do an audition. And so, of course, I'm like, oh, this is feeling real now. Like really real. If I'm listening to narrators who could actually be doing my audiobook. So of course, I call up my friend and fellow Bonsai Moon Books author, Rachel Woods, get her on Skype. I think we did Skype. We get on Skype, and so we're listening to about 10 different potential narrators. And now, with romantic suspense, there's a certain voice that is predominant for that kind of badass hero male character that you hear in these audiobooks. So I knew what I was listening for because I am an audiobook listener, right? So I know the type of voice that I was listening for. And it's that real deep, guttural kind of, I'm a badass hero type of voice. And I'm not very good at doing it, which is why I should not be doing my own audiobooks. So I knew what I was listening for, but I also knew that, okay, well, Julian isn't really one of those types of a badass heroes where, he has to put the woman in her place and, look here, you need to do this, you need to do that. Like, that's not his personality. Julian is gruff with criminals and terrorists and people that he needs to be gruff with, but then he's really gentle and nice and kind of sweet with people that he cares about, and he's friendly and he's caring with those people. So I really needed somebody who could do that careful balance that I was looking for in Julian. Rachel and I started listening to the 10 different narrators, and immediately, like the second one on the list, I heard his voice and I was like, ooh, that's what I'm looking for. And then I looked at the price and I was like, ah! He was one of the most expensive per finished hour, the most expensive per finished hour narrator on the page. So I was like, But we both agreed, like, he needed to be a finalist, right? So we kept listening, and then I found another guy who had it too, and I was like, yes, and he was cheaper. And I was like, yes. And so I added him to the finalists, and then I found a third person where I was like, he might be able to do it. Might. So I added him because he was the cheapest. But all the rest of the voices, they didn't have that kind of that toughness that I needed to hear in the voice that I was looking for Julian. And so after that, I clicked the little button to say, yes, I would like this person to audition. And I had to go through the book and pick a chapter that I thought I really wanted to hear the narrator do, to see, does he have that essence that I'm looking for? So I picked a scene towards the end of The Accidental Hero where Julian is trying to rescue Mina from Priscilla Dumais' mansion, and he gets in there, and then Priscilla locks him inside there with Mina. And so Mina is waking up all groggy, and she realizes that Julian is actually there in the room with her. And so they kind of have this kind of nice little intimate moment as he's trying to get her out of this jam. And so that was the one that I picked for them to audition. So then I find out later, once the auditions start pouring in, that one of the three decided not to audition for my audiobook. And so I tried not to take offense. I'm like, why you didn't want to audition for my audiobook? And he was the cheapest. So I had to take him off the list because he didn't want to audition. So anyway, so I put that to the side because he was the cheapest and he wasn't my first choice, right? He was the one where I was like, you might be able to do it, you might not, right? So then I had two really good ones, right? And so the auditions came in, and now I'm like, is this gonna be hard to choose or is it gonna be easy to choose? They were both phenomenal. And I'm listening and I'm getting goosebumps as I'm hearing my novel being performed by somebody. And it was like surreal to hear this performance and this emotions. And so really when it boiled down to it, it was an easy choice for me between the two different auditions, because one person, and when I read his bio, he had theater and acting and stuff like that in his background, and the other person had journalism and broadcasting more things in their background. So both of them had great voices, but I could clearly tell that one was bringing more emotions and emoting more in the audition, and the other one was reading very strong, but a little flatter on the emotional side. And I mean, it's the emotion piece that like just really like sucked me in. And I was like, yes, oh, I'm so worried for them, but I wrote this so I know how it's gonna turn out. Okay, so I picked the one who had the good voice and the emotions, and yes, it was the most expensive narrator on the page. But I said, well, now that I've heard it, I can't go and choose something else because I'm gonna keep thinking that other guy, that I should have picked that other narrator. I shouldn't have been so cheap. I should go ahead and picked him. I wonder how he would have done. Like that would have been rifling through the back of my mind, right? So I just knew I have to go with him. So I'm really excited about my narrator choice, and I'm looking forward to doing this whole process and getting it done with this narrator. I think the next steps up is to sign contracts and all that kind of stuff. So I'll give you guys an update on how it all continues to play out next week. And if you want to stick around, you can listen to the sample of the narrator that I chose after this. So if you want to continue to keep up with me and all the ups and downs that I go through as I try to write and publish new books, click the subscribe button. Then don't forget to click that little silver bell so you won't miss when I'm doing a video, and I will see you next time. And now to the audiobook sample of my narrator for The Accidental Hero, Jack Callahan. Take it away, Jack.
Jack Callahan, The Accidental Hero. The intercom crackled, and then silence filled the room. Julian banged against the door, kicking himself for not being more alert to Dumay's double-cross when she opened the door to the wine cellar. He'd been too worried about Mina and couldn't stop himself from getting closer to her. Checking his watch, Julian only had an hour to get Mina out of the cage and free from the building. Reaching for the Swiss Army skipper knife he'd smuggled into the mansion past the guard who frisked him, Julian began feeling around the bars for a lock or area that could be used to weaken the structure and break it apart. "Julian, is that really you?" Mina's voice was weak as she stared at him. Julian squatted to the ground and reached his hands through the bars toward her. "Yes, it's me. I'm going to get you out of here. Everything's going to be okay." Mina crawled toward him, a spark in her eyes as she stared at him. "How did Priscilla capture you?" "She didn't. I came here to save you," Julian said, giving her a small smile. "How did you know how to find me?" Mina asked, brushing wayward strands of her thick hair behind her ear. "Omar said you'd already left for Kenya, but I smelled your perfume in the trunk of Zach Weber's car, and I knew something bad had happened." "And that was enough for you to try to find me?" Mina asked, frowning. "More than enough. Zach wouldn't tell me where you were, so I talked to Dumay and we struck a deal." A sob choked in Mina's throat as tears filled her eyes. "You never should have come looking for me. Oh, God, you're going to die because of me." "Hey, stop that. I'm exactly where I want to be," Julian said, clutching her arms in his hands. "I would do it again in a heartbeat. We're going to get out of here. I promise you that." "It's too late. The cops may be able to catch her, but there's no way they'll be able to save us in time," Mina said, clutching his arms like a lifeline. "That's okay. We're going to save ourselves." Julian looked down at his watch. 40 minutes left. "But I'm going to need your help. There's got to be a lock on these bars somewhere. If you can help me find it, I can use my knife to unlock it. Can you do that?" Mina nodded, then stood on shaky legs. For the next half hour, they spent every minute poring over each bar of the cage looking for a keyhole, crack, or other weakness that could be exploited. Nothing. Dumay had trapped Mina in a welded fortress with no way out. Mina stopped Julian from examining the bars. "This is pointless. I was knocked out when they brought me in here. I don't know if the bars open or if they built this cage around me. We're almost out of time. Listen to me. There's a lock on that door. Julian turned to look at the wooden door that Priscilla Dumais had slammed in his face, locking him inside the room with Mina. You can save yourself. Julian, listen to me. You have to save yourself. Please. We both can't die down here, Mina said, her words resonating confidently through short breaths. She reached a hand toward his chest as she slid down to the floor. What's wrong? Julian asked. Chest feels tight, and it's getting kind of hard to breathe. Go, Julian. Save yourself, Mina said. She rested her head against the bars as her hand fell to the floor.